Hi, everyone. My name is Ian Teague, and welcome to another episode of the Radiant Lawcast. With me today is Dylan and Chelsey. We're all three of us, part of the Radiant Law delivery team. Chelsey, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I am based in Joburg, and obviously as we work remotely, I touch base in Cape Town now and again. And I work across a number of projects within Radiant as well as the MLS stream, but predominantly project-based. And yeah, that's really my story. How about you, Dylan?
Yeah, so I'm Dylan. I'm based in Cape Town. I'm across the MLS stream, but have led several projects over the time at Radiant, and also been a part of project work with Chelsey for a couple of clients.
Great, guys. Thanks for joining me. And I oversee delivery at Radiant. So today we're talking about contract projects. Like you guys mentioned, you've got lots of experience doing these projects. Let's kick off right up front. What are contract projects in the very first place? Give us an intro.
So contract projects, there's several different types of projects that we do at Radiant. One of the key projects that we do is a review project. This is where we will have a client that has several agreements with suppliers or clients where they need to determine what the position is or whether a certain aspect of a regulatory requirement has been met. It requires a lot of hard work, a lot of review, and a lot of time spent. So we will assist with that. We can take a look at the contracts and we will review them and provide the client with some feedback on what the positions are across all those individual contracts.
Just to add on what Dylan has said is these projects often require quite a big volume of contracts. So that can be quite overwhelming to an in-house legal team. And I think that's what really makes Radiant such a valuable asset to a client is that we firstly have the knowledge and expertise in running a project, but we also have the resources to do it. So we can take it off your hands, we can meet the deadlines, and we can have the correct assets and bespoke solutions in place to execute your project successfully.
The second tier of project that we assist with, and often what we find is that a review project will go hand in hand with this type of project, which is a remediation project. So this is after we potentially conducted a review or the client has in-house conducted a review of their agreements. They've determined that there are several agreements that need to be amended. They need certain regulatory terms implemented. Then what we do is either the client will provide us with the standard or the amendment that they want across all these individual clients or suppliers, or we will develop that with the client and we will prepare an amendment and reach out to any prospective client or supplier, help them remediate that, conduct the negotiations. Like Chelsey was saying, again, it's simple in nature, but it requires a lot of input, a lot of time, and something that in-house counsel don't always have the ability or bandwidth to deal with. So we kind of take that off your desk while continuing to report to the client, make sure they're aware of every step and delivering the project within the constraints of any kind of regulatory demand and keeping it in line with what the client is specifically looking for at the end of the day.
All right. So that's review, remediation. And here with remediation, we're talking like EBA outsourcing guidelines, got to be in the contracts by certain dates. And this is where we're kind of looking at the contracts, checking at the review stage. It's like right kind of stuff there in the first place. And then if not, negotiating the amendment with the other side, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So like if new regulations or new legislation has to be released, then that's exactly what we would do. You would provide us with a number of contracts that you feel need to be updated. We would possibly conduct a gap analysis, review that agreement, amend it, send it out, negotiate it, and get it closed off within the deadline.
Beyond that, though, there are two other types of projects that we are able to assist with. We've got a global rollout project, basically where internal policy might have shifted at a client and all of a sudden they need new SECs in, or they've got a new trademark license agreement that needs to be sent out to several different suppliers. Again, similar to the remediation project, we help assist with that, getting that in place and rolling it out to the individual suppliers. And the final project, these other projects, more passion, but something that we're really well versed in and able to assist is because we've got so many bespoke in-house development teams that develop special legal solutions for ourselves. We are able to assist the clients developing their own specific solutions. So an example is a contract database. It's a nightmare to keep track of individual contracts across all these individual suppliers. We're currently working with a client to build out this database so that there's a single source of truth, and also allow for contract automation so that business and procurement teams are able to get a first draft of contract out, and it covers everything that's necessary for the agreement without any unnecessary additional terms. And because we've got all these additional resources inside Radiant, and this is something that we've been doing for years now, we are really well versed in helping our clients and walking the path with them to getting themselves automated or creating these contract databases.
All right. So we're talking lots of contracts that need to be reviewed. They need to be changed for some kind of remediation. That's going to involve some negotiation. So AI can get you so far, but at some point you're drafting an amendment and you're negotiating with someone and you're going back and forth to get this thing done before a deadline. I mean, that's mostly where we're encountering these kind of projects, right? And it's thousands of contracts which need to be addressed in some way, shape, or form. So you guys have been at the coalface across a number of these kind of projects. And I get the point that in-house teams they're slammed. And this just hits their desk, right? A regulator has changed something. Suddenly, you got to change your contracts and you have no more capacity or resource to do it. So typically, you're going to look outside. You're going to look to how, other ways you could solve this problem. And I think that's where clients contact us. But hey, they could contact a whole bunch of other people. A whole bunch of other providers could help them. And maybe you guys can talk us through what makes us a bit different. How can we really help clients with these kind of projects?
I really think what sets Radiant apart is the fact that we have been able to not only develop but maintain and improve a number of tools, assets, processes, which have allowed us to effectively and efficiently run projects. These are items that are not just created overnight. We have used the number of years and the number of projects that we've been across to create these assets. And because we've got such a desire to continuously improve, we're always updating these assets and these tools. And I think those are huge, huge value add to a client, especially when it comes to project management. And I truly think that does set us apart from our competitors.
No, for sure. There's a large investment, a global investment client of ours that we have worked with for a number of years, and they have seen the incremental improvements because they keep running projects with us. And every time we run a project with them, we get to know the team better, we get to improve on the process, we learn from previous projects, and the process gets better and better. And it's resulted in an incredibly awesome relationship with them where they come to us, they ask us, they say, can you help us with this? This is something that's going to hit our desk in the next 6 months. Can you start thinking about ways that we can approach that? And that kind of value added to the client, I think, is you can't put a price on it. And it really has resulted in quite an awesome relationship and a trusting relationship with us.
I also think, as a result of our experience, we have also been able to predict and anticipate potential challenges that we may encounter on a project. So we are able to create solutions and mitigate any sort of hurdle that we think could actually happen along the way. And I think that's a big benefit to actually meeting deadlines.
Yeah, two things I love about our contracts approach, our projects approaches, is the FMEA, the failure mode and effects analysis we do in the beginning to try and predict what could go wrong and mitigations right up front. I think that's really stood us in good stead to tackle challenges before they even come up, kind of things that people don't even think will happen, getting ahead of those issues before we tackle the project. I want to ask you a little bit about that in a second. But the second is the after action review, the post-mortem of what actually happened. What do we learn from that? And what are we going to do differently next time? And I think to your point, Dill, about clients just trusting us, we've done these kind of projects for them year after year. It's because of that, right? It's like, yeah, we learned this and we've discovered this about your organization. So next time we do a project for you, we make this change at this point so that it's better. I think that really has helped.
No, definitely.
Okay. So maybe you can talk us through kind of a step-by-step process that we deployed to manage these processes. I mean, don't go into too much detail here, but just walk us through what it looks like.
No, for sure. So we always we always operate by the term measure twice and cut once. The longest part of a project, the most difficult part of the project is at the outset, but we put that time in, we put those hours in, we work hard at developing solutions and working with the client initially because it makes our lives so much easier down the line. So we scope
the client's life, right? It's not our life, but I mean,
of course,
we've seen that happen where someone wants to rush into a project and it's just pain down the line for everyone. Client, procurement, sales team, everyone suffers if you don't measure twice.
No, yeah. If you're not aligned, it just leads to heartache down the line. So, we have proper scoping discussions with the client. We understand what their needs are, what they want to do. And again, going back to our experience with projects, we put the assets in place. We say, we've seen that you reaching out to a business support team first really allows us to kind of start off on the right foot with them, because you're always balancing the need between being regulatory compliant as well as being fast and getting things done. So there's tiny little changes, tiny little steps that you can make that really help with that process. So scoping it out, understanding what needs to be achieved, developing the email. So we've got templates, developing a playbook so we know what is and isn't acceptable to you, and we stick within that. And a clear escalation process. We come across an issue. We've got a supplier that's being particularly sticky about a certain point. We want to be clear that we can take it to the right person at the right time and get it resolved. And then we record those positions. We want to know what your fallback is. So we develop those assets. We scope the project with the client. And then also we try and automate it as much as possible. It makes it predictable, it makes it clear and efficient, but then still not losing the touch of having an actual person on the other end of the deal at the end of the day, because we're all about being reasonable. So then we'll work together with the project team. We will chat to them, see what they're comfortable with, and make sure that they're involved with negotiations. They've fostered these relationships with suppliers and clients, and we don't want to break that. That's so important to maintain that level of trust. And then I think key is reporting. This should be something that's coming off your desk, but that's something that you've got two arms around at the end of the day, so that we are consistently reporting. Our cadence normally on these projects is once a week at least, where we have a regular governance meeting. We'll chat through any issues we've seen. We will provide stats and figures, but also something we're working on is the ability for clients to access these stats on our own portal. So we're creating a project view that allows our clients to see live where any part of the project is currently at. So we're really keen on making sure that the client is aware of every step, and through that, they are comfortable with the fact that they can step back, they can trust that we're getting the job done, and that if there are any issues, they can come to us. There's always an opportunity to chat, and we can make amendments, we can make adjustments, and we can keep moving forward together.
I think that's critical, Dylan. Each project is going to be unique and going to require bespoke solutions. So not only at the beginning, but throughout the project, things change. And we are adaptable, and we can create solutions continuously to meet the bespoke needs and the unique needs of each client and each project.
The reporting piece, so we've seen real success with that, where the in-house team is slammed, they've got to get it off their desk, but they kind of need to still probably report to someone else about how it's going. And that weekly call, I mean, how long? It's normally 15 minutes, 30 minutes max, right? About how the project's going. You guys have normally agreed the key headline metrics that the client wants to know about at like that measure twice, cut once phase of this is what we want to know. Who are we chasing? Who hasn't replied? What stage of negotiations? All of that kind of stuff. what's missing information. I mean, how many times has that happened, right? Like 500 suppliers. However, we haven't sent 200 of the contracts yet, so you can't even get started. That's been really successful to keep the client updated. Like, here's that one email you get before the call, all your key stats, key things to chat about. Bam, can you tell you what you need, so you can stay in control. All right, so we've heard about the kind of projects that we would support, lots of contracts that need to be reviewed, that need to be remediated. AI can take you so far, but you're going to get some lawyers involved to get it done. It's got to get off your desk, but you need to stay in control, and Radiant can help you do that. And all our methodologies built out over time to help just seamlessly run a project. Chelsey, maybe you could give us an example, just a real life example of where we've done this for a client, like the end-to-end solution, and made a real difference for the client. Can you just talk us through an example?
For sure. So an example, we dealt with quite a big banking institution who had identified a number of business critical agreements that had to be reviewed and remediated in line with the new EBA guidelines that were released. As with any sort of regulations, the regulator set quite a strict deadline within which these agreements needed to be amended. So at the end of the day, we were actually given 260 agreements that we ended up dealing with. We split those agreements into two different categories. One was considered non-material outsourcing and one was considered material outsourcing. That was actually a huge benefit because the non-material were obviously not as business critical as the material outsourcing agreements. And as a result, they were dealt with differently. So non-material outsourcing was dealt with a standard amendment. There was no bespoking it. And those were quick and easy to send out to a supplier. Whereas with regards to the material outsourcing agreements, those actually required an in-depth review of the agreement. Firstly, to identify any gaps that existed in the existing agreement, and any gaps that were identified, we would then create a bespoke amendment that would go out to that supplier. Ordinarily, that would take a much longer time, and the negotiations would be more extensive. So by splitting them into two categories really did speed up the potential to dispatch and conclude agreements. So by the end of it, like I said, we had 260 agreements, and 60% of the agreements had actually been completed within 6 months of dispatching the first amendment. So that's quite a good feat. We managed to stick within the deadline as far as possible. At the end of the day, we only handed back about 5 agreements to the client where suppliers were just not willing to entertain the amendment. So that's a pretty good percentage considering the volumes we had received.
Yeah. I remember watching the project from the outside and seeing how that approach of hold up, they're not all as critical. Oops, almost spilled the coffee. Put the cup to the side. So seeing how they're not all as critical, don't treat them the same. And I think that was really good as the team figured that out to take different approaches, which helped get most of those amendments done on time. I mean, I remember when those outsourcing guidelines came out, huge suppliers were saying, we've never heard of these things. And I remember you guys were, and the rest of the team, negotiating these amendments with, to be honest, some of those regulations ask for things which are pretty aggressive, pretty unreasonable sometimes. And these suppliers were saying, there's no way. And we had to negotiate these amendments into contracts. And it took a while to get them on board until they eventually figured out this is a regulatory requirement. And in those 5, there's always some, right, at the end. There's always that last bit.
Children.
The problem children. Yeah. The customer or supplier just unwilling to get on board, which it tends to get escalated. But thankfully, it's like very small. And that gets dealt with at a different level.
And I think in terms of these regulations in particular, like you say, some of the requests were quite unreasonable. And there was almost very little to no benefit to the supplier in amending and adjusting their agreement in line with these amendments, which made our negotiations obviously quite tense and quite complex. But yeah, we managed to execute it successfully. And as a result, we're quite confident that we can take on any project now, no matter the complexity.
So we've obviously done this across privacy and a whole bunch of different kinds of regulations. And it's the same kind of thing, right? It doesn't matter what you're changing, whether it's internal reorg or whatever's happening, it's regulation or it's some other change to the contracts. Same kind of thing. You need a methodology to attacking projects, which I think our team brings.
No, and I think the biggest learning pulling out of the project that Chelsey was on is walking those regulations with the clients and getting and helping them see like, no, there's a way that we can do this simpler. There is a way that we can do this more efficiently, and it doesn't need to be as intense as we're making it. We can make this a lot simpler, and then getting those amendments in place. And it's a learning once again that I think we've carried on to all our projects since then. And it's so important to helping us get those amazing stats of, closing 60% in 6 months, and at the end of the day, basically closing out 99% of the agreements with a small majority having to be handed back to the clients. And there's always going to be risk at the end of the day, but that's an incredible feat, and one that your team Chelsey should be super proud of.
Yeah, and I think actually at the end of the day, what's quite important is that we're not robots, like as much as you want to automate all of this, it's not going to happen. We like to believe that we're quite pleasant to work with, and we're able to adjust and adapt and be reasonable to negotiate these things. So yeah, that's what sets us apart.
Yeah, absolutely. It's pragmatism, right? Finding pragmatic solutions, getting it done, supporting our clients. All right. So someone wants to get in touch, speak about a project. Bill, how would they do that?
We're always available on email. If you go to our website, radiantlaw.com, there's Nicola, Ian. You're a great place to get in touch with. He's our head of delivery, so always a good bet. I think we're always open to LinkedIn messages where I post. So there's any number of ways to get a hold of us. But I think at the end of the day, best place, our website, radiantlaw.com. All our contact details are there. Feel free to reach out to any of us. We're all friendly, I promise. Contract
projects get massively overwhelming. What's the last bit you'd like to add? Give our listeners a last bit of information to help them understand projects. Chelsey?
I think it's just reassuring to know that once you outsource a project to us, that you are handing over a project to skilled experts in the field. We really do strive to be friendly and accommodating. And at the end of the day, if you want to rest easy, knowing that your project's going to be dealt with absolute transparency and full oversight, then we are absolutely the people to instruct.
Cool.
I think the number one thing is start early. We develop a plan, measure twice, cut once. Let's get those processes in line. Let's assign responsibility, get it off your desk, get it out of your head, but also understand that it is in capable hands and in hands that you can trust to get done right. So the earlier, the better, and the more efficient the project is at the end of the day, I always find.
Yeah. I guess my little bit would be, don't batch process. How many times have we seen that, right?
Yeah.
Hold the whole thing back until you got everything perfect. You just got to start these projects. We often say that, right? Like, I know there might be 1,000 contracts, but have you got 10? Send them over and we'll get going with them, because that deadline is coming and you got to get
ball rolling. Absolutely get that ball rolling.
Yeah. Guys, thanks so much for joining me. Been great chatting.
Pleasure.
See you next time.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye.
Cheers.